Se metió hasta la cocina, and welcome to Shift+F1, a podcast about speedy race cars. That, by the way, is a Mexican-Spanish idiom meaning they went all the way into the kitchen, which is an expression for when someone barges in or gets way too involved without being invited. There is certainly some barging over the weekend, especially in the sprint race, but we'll get to that in a moment. I am Drew Scanlon. Joining me, Rob Zachney. How are you, Rob?
Not too bad. Lots to talk about this week.
Yes, indeed. We have a sprint, a race, and a pre-show for Mexico. So let's get right to it. Danny O'Dwyer is on assignment coming back from Australia, down under, today. So he'll be joining us next episode. If you are new to this podcast, a very warm welcome to you. And if you are new to Formula One itself, we recommend listening to our preseason primer episode, which assumes no prior F1 knowledge and explains how the sport works and who everybody is. So if you'd like to go back and listen to that, it's episode 298. Also, this show would not be possible without our audience over at patreon.com/shiftf1, where every month we release ad-free versions of the podcast early for patrons, along with bonus podcasts and videos exclusively for our patrons that cover racing documentaries and films, F1 video games, experiments with other racing series, and a lot of weird things. So if you would like to support the show and get access to all that fun stuff, head over to patreon.com/shiftf1 or click the link in the show notes. This month, Rob, we're doing spooky movies. The patrons voted. There was a tie, and we broke the tie, and we'll be doing Christine, the John Carpenter directed, Stephen King written film from the 80s. We've not yet recorded it, again, because Danny is traveling, but we will be trying to get that in. I think we can do it. We've got 10 days to do it before Halloween.
Yeah, we can manage it.
But we want to give a special shout out to our title sponsors over on Patreon, including Philip Wells, Dr. V, EA Bonesaw Simulator 2K26, Matt and Harmony, Dinge, It's a Me Ferrario, Big Oil. Special thanks to Big Oil, Mojo Nixon Gaming F1, Get Rich or Die Ryan, Agave ATX, Typhus Training, Turf SCS, Michael Maves, Cigarettes for Moderate to Severe Lance Stroll, TelemetryDeck.com, FTC, Tracy Syntax, Drew Stewart, Bailey Foote, Jason Chadwick, Abraham Getchell, Bunny, Ellipses, Snigs, HireThisWalker.com, Alex Goucher, Max Voltar Keyboards, Jeff Foster, William Rump, Troy Stammer, HireThatWalker.com, which I checked, and yes, it does load up a picture of the Austin Walker, Rob, that you and I know and love.
Excellent.
And redirects to his Blue Sky page. So, hey, if anyone needs a writer, podcaster, game designer out there, HireThatWalker.com. Lachlan the Madden Man, Samurai Love Story, and Jason Kelly rounding out the title sponsors. Thank you to all of our title sponsors and to all of our patrons and to all of our listeners for supporting this podcast. Should we just jump right into it, Rob? The race weekend in Austin. All right. Well, the sprint grid looks like this. Max Verstappen taking yet another sprint pole ahead of the two McLarens, Lando Norris and Oscar Piastri. And then, surprise, Nico Hülkenberg starting fourth. The first time qualifying in the top 10 this year, and it's fourth. Really amazing to have.
Oh, man, I'm so excited to see how this works out for him.
Yeah. George Russell will start fifth, followed by Fernando Alonso, Carlos Sainz, Lewis Hamilton, Alex Albon, both Williams also in the top 10, and Charles Leclerc starting 10th. Then we've got Kimi Antonelli, Isaac Hadjar, Pierre Gasly, Lance Stroll, Liam Lawson in 15th, Oliver Behrman, Franco Colapinto, Yuki Tsunoda starts 18th. He got caught out by some bad timing, apparently, that led to a gaggle of cars at the end of the session, all trying to set a lap. I feel like we haven't seen that in a while. It was nice to kind of throw back.
It was pretty bad. I don't remember. I thought if you're trapped in the queue in the pit lane, you can zip around if literally nobody's moving. But maybe you can't. But he was stuck there at the back of the queue, and cars were parked at the light, and they were parked at the line, just not going on track. And he did not make it around. He he missed the cutoff for the session by like 5 seconds.
Yeah.
So yeah, like kind of a whiff by Red Bull on timing, but also I was watching it and I was like, okay, it turns out I don't know when you're allowed to just say fuck it and floor it.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think you certainly can swing around other drivers, but it's a matter of, can you do so without breaking any other rules or torching your tires or, all this other stuff. A lot to think about on that outlap of qualifying. Rounding out the top 20 or the 20, Esteban Ocon in 19th and Gabriel Bortoleto in 20th. He did not officially set a time because he had one or both of his laps deleted for track limits. All right.
Here we
Let's
go.
Take it to the start of the sprint. I've got notes here, Rob, but if you want it. Okay. Good start from Verstappen, who stays out in front. Behind him, Piastri pulls up alongside Norris as they head into turn 1. Norris has the advantage on the inside, so Piastri takes a different line to the outside, hoping to cut behind Norris and get that better exit. However, Hülkenberg sees this as Piastri leaving the door open and dives for the inside so that when Piastri does the cutback, he hits Hülkenberg. This pushes Hülkenberg into Alonso and bounces Piastri up into the air and then into his teammate, Lando Norris, now on the outside. This takes Alonso, Piastri, and Norris out of the sprint race, elevating Russell and Sainz to second and third. Hülkenberg spins but does rejoin. Rob, what did you make of this?
First of all, and mind you, I say this like I like both drivers a great deal. I like Piastri a lot. But I want to revisit the previous race and some of the discourse where you had like Piastri partisans going through a fine-tooth comb all the edgy things that Lando's done, has been admonished for, and they let him off the hook for that light contact in the last race, going for it at the start, and it is followed up by the worst thing that could possibly happen, and it is undeniably Oscar's fault. It doesn't mean it's necessarily an egregious move. Like, I don't think it was an irresponsible thing to attempt. It is the definition of a racing incident. Yeah. But if you're asking who had it in their power to make it so that you didn't take out two McLarens at the start of this race, it was Oscar. Oscar deciding to cut in that hard, and like that was my immediate first reaction. Actually, on replay, I became more sympathetic to it. My immediate first reaction was, when you are cutting back inside that hard at turn 1 at the start of a race, someone's going to be there. Someone will not they will not be able to turn inside where you are going, and there will be contact. You just kind of like, you may not see them, but you have to anticipate that they are there. And Oscar attempting that meant that he kind of threw away the one thing that Austin really affords you, which is limitless amounts of runoff to get out of situations like this. Mm-hmm. But that only works if you're going to use it. He sort of steered back toward where there's no margin for error, and both cars got taken out. Now, I think it was a perfectly valid attempt to try to hold on to that position and get underneath Lando like that. But it was also a move where there was a significant chance of some kind of hard contact happening, if not predictably the chain reaction that would take out everyone. That was my reaction. What about you?
Yeah, I am also tempted to call this a lap 1 racing incident. Yes, Piastri maybe should have anticipated that a car would be there.
Yeah.
Hülkenberg maybe should have anticipated that Piastri might attempt the cutback. But I can see why both moves were tempting. Mm-hmm. It was interesting hearing Sky call Zach Brown on the pit wall immediately after it happened. And he was just like, oh, man, obviously upset. And he called it amateur hour. later he changed his mind. He said, I can't really put that on Nico. And then, in fact, went and apologized it to him directly. But yeah, I mean, everyone is out there trying to get their own advantage. And at the start, tires are cold, cars are heavy, although not as heavy because it's a sprint. And they're all bunched up. So stuff like this happens. And yeah, I don't think it's particularly egregious in any one direction.
And one of the things I do remember is there was so much frustration. There's a long Reddit post about this, like a sort of a dossier against McLaren's handling of Oscar and Lando, talking about the time that McLaren admonished him for locking up the car and almost T-boning Lando at an earlier race, which to me was kind of preposterous because, like, literally what I described is, again, a worst case scenario. You know what I mean? Like, that is the reason you slap down hard on that is because, yeah, you can't have these guys dive bombing each other ideally, especially with the championship where it was at the time. It didn't seem to me at all like partisanship for McLaren to get on the radio and be like, "Hey, man, it was a pretty gentle admonishment." They said like that was like I think they said it was like the definition of marginal. That they wanted to discourage him from doing things like that. And here yet again, we have kind of another marginal move that ends with a double DNF. Fortunately, in a sprint, not the main affair. But I think it is a decent example of if you're sort of sitting there in the armchair trying to adjudicate like the ticky-tacky, like what is fair here. Racing is really dynamic, and the consequences of things can be really out of proportion to the degree of the sin committed. And I think it's kind of a good illustration of why trying to get into like the hair splitting around things like how the team is adjudicating like papaya rolls can be a bit silly because the position you'll stake out could be made to look very foolish or hypocritical the very next week, despite both drivers fundamentally being the same guys they were before. Nothing much changed here. The other thing that, you know, a situation like this puts the team in the jam for is you lose the data that you're going to need to get for the race. And they're qualifying later that day. Like, they're going to have to put these cars back together. So it's a very unfortunate move. Very, very funny how it all panned out. This is, I was saying they're going to hit each other in Mexico. That was where I put my bet. Really was like, Austin, you got tons of space. No.
You're right. Yeah. We get a safety car for this, which restarts on lap 6. Lap 8, Russell has closed up to Verstappen and takes a dive from way back to the inside of turn 12, but can't make the corner, forcing Verstappen to go off track to avoid hitting him and staying ahead of Russell. Lap 9, Leclerc goes off track briefly, I think at turn 6, which allows his teammate Hamilton to pull up beside him on the straight, approaching turn 12. Hamilton takes the inside of the corner and seals 4th place. Lap 14, Antonelli goes for it on Behrman, taking the inside of turn 15. Behrman, however, goes off track and rejoins ahead of Antonelli. I don't remember, did he get a penalty for that? It looks like he finished in 8th, so ahead of Behrman. Yes, he did get a time penalty, I think. And yeah. Okay. Yeah, I'll get to that. Lap 16, Stroll tries a move from just another zip code, dives up the inside of Ocon at turn 1, but realizes
he is doing the Canadian wave before the accident is even over.
Yeah.
He's like, sorry.
Yeah, he locks up and just spears Ocon, taking both of them off track and out of the race. Yeah, Stroll holding up his hand to say, my bad, bro.
Okay, So I do think it looked super egregious. I will say, like, when I was watching Ocon coming up that hill, I was like, it was so inviting. Like, it really did. I am not sure if he hadn't locked the front. I do wonder if he could have slipped through. But the moment it locked, he was just on a sled aimed at Ocon. It was bad. He is lunging from a long way back. I haven't looked at the incident since, but it's especially tough with those camera angles at the end of straight because they have such a foreshortening effect. So it's really tough to judge like the distance they had to work with. But in real time from the end of the corner, I was like, it didn't seem like the worst thing to try, like chancy, but this is a hard track to pass at, you know, with sector 1 and the S curves, there's so much aerodynamic sensitivity. You know, I see where you see that crack of daylight in turn 1. I understand how you just send it.
Yeah, especially because in the periphery there is so much other space. You're like,
Yeah,
no problem. He'll avoid me. Not so much. This caused the safety car to come out. It also earned Stroll a 5-place grid drop for the race later in the weekend. The race finishes under safety car. Max Verstappen coming home in first. Pretty sure he's won well over half of every sprint that F1 has had at this point. I think we've had something like 23 and he's won 13. George Russell finishes second and Carlos Sainz in third. Behind them, Lewis Hamilton, Charles Leclerc, Alex Albon, Yuki Tsunoda, and Kimi Antonelli rounding out the 8th spot, the last of the points-paying positions. Oliver Behrman finished 8th on track, but with the time penalty from that incident, drops to the back of the finishers in 15th, since everyone was bunched up behind the safety car. Liam Lawson, 9th, Pierre Gasly, 10th, and then we've got Bortoleto, Hadjar, Hulkenberg, unfortunately, 13th place after his 4th place start. Franco Colapinto, and Behrman. Then the DNFs of Ocon, Stroll, Norris, Piastri, and poor Fernando Alonso. All right,
the unluckiest driver in the world.
I mean, he said it, and just hard to fault. It's hard to see where that could be wrong. Let's take a quick early break here, Rob, and then we'll be back with the race, the full race in Austin. All right. Here's the grid for the United States Grand Prix in Austin, Tejas. Max Verstappen, once again on pole, surpassing Sebastian Vettel for 3rd on the all-time list of pole positions. Lando Norris will start 2nd, and then Charles Leclerc in 3rd, starting on the soft tire, one of only 3 drivers to do so, and the only one in the top 10. Everybody else in the top 10 is starting on mediums. George Russell 4th, Lewis Hamilton 5th, and then Oscar Piastri in 6th. As you mentioned, Rob, Andrea Stella saying here that the lack of data due to that double DNF in the sprint compromised their qualifying for later in the day. Kimi Antonelli will start 7th, followed by Oliver Behrman. A real turnaround. The first time he will start in the top 10 of consecutive races. Carlos Sainz starts 9th, and in the 10th spot, Fernando Alonso. Then we've got Hulkenberg, Lawson, Tsunoda, Gasly, Colapinto in 15th. Then Bortoleto, Ocon, Albon in 18th, had a great lap in Q1, but went over track limits, was flirting with them like through the whole lap and got dinged at turn 15. So it was deleted. Then in 19th, Lance Stroll, which includes his 5-place grid drop. Also, as race fans pointed out, this is the 30th time in a row that Stroll has qualified behind his teammate.
Yeah.
Isaac Hadjar will start 20th. He set no time because he crashed in Q1 after going over a bump at turn 6 and losing control, kind of rear-ending into the barriers.
Yeah, it was
bummer for him.
Kind of fluky for how thoroughly that car just like snaps away from him. Real quick, because the track limits thing came up, and it's going to come up it came up a lot throughout the race too.
Yeah.
I think it's a really fun course to drive. I think it's a really neat track. I think it also runs afoul of the combination of a lot of more modern, safe track design, having lots of runoff, and the sort of circuit limits only really being described by a line without any sort of consequence for going off, and not much like visual reference point to let you know exactly where that line is. And so this became a race where, and qualifying was like this too, where you were constantly seeing drivers being being told they were across track limits, times deleted for really minor infractions. And the really frustrating thing is a lot of times you would hear them not really even know where they went off, because again, our TV pod view it's sat very high above the driver. You have a great view of where those tires are. The drivers are kind of going by vibes, down in the cockpit, and they can't see this stuff. And it's a little bit grating. It does sort of highlight how badly I might wish for things that could better create both a sense of consequence and also just more of a physical sense of when you're violating those track limits. Either rougher, like meaner curbs, or some bit of gravel that'll take time out of you if you push those limits. Because right now everyone is incentivized to run right up to that limit, but then it's kind of coin flippy as to whether they stay in the track limits. There's a couple corners here where almost every turn, every lap, drivers are flirting with that line. The other thing, and this came up a lot during the race, and a couple drivers are debating it over the radio. Is it really fair? Do we want F1 to count track limits violations that occur as part of a chancy overtaking move or a bit of defensive driving? Because a lot of drivers picked up those track limits violations because they were trying a lunge, or they were reacting. They were sort of running out to take an avoiding action, and it does feel like when you're piling those consequences up, you are disincentivizing people taking risk and sort of encouraging F1 to be that sort of boring processional that it can be at times.
Yeah, definitely something to think about. What do you think of this? I don't like this idea, but what if we had a different number before the black and white flag came out per track? So because this one doesn't have a lot of gravel traps right next to the track, so what if we said, all right, well, 5 track limits violations equals the black and white flag, and their one thereafter is a penalty, versus the other tracks, which are, you get 3 and then you get black and white flag.
I don't think it's the worst idea. I do think I would prefer, because they do have these things reviewed individually. I think I would just prefer more of a contextual, if 2 drivers are fighting through a corner and there's a track limits violation, I really don't want, unless the overtake happens, in which case, yeah, they have to hand the position back. But beyond that, I don't love having that count against your limit, because I think the spirit of the track limits thing is, in qualifying, it's just not fair if people violate track limits and they pick up time. That is self-evident. It's also not fair if during a race, lap after lap, people just decide their natural racing line is going to be off track limits for their convenience and ease of use. And I think the stewards are sharp enough to draw the distinction between that case, where it is just, hey, you've decided to take this lap and you just didn't make the track limits. Draw a distinction between that and, hey, you were trying something and there was another car there. I think those are 2 really distinct situations, and I think it's kind of silly to be running up the track limits counter for that second scenario.
Yeah. Yeah, something to think about and watch. Wonder if F1 will make any adjustments, especially after this weekend. So we'll get to that. So let's start with the start. Another great one off the line from Verstappen, keeping him out of any fracas. Leclerc also has a great start on his soft tire, going around the outside of Norris at turn 1 and taking second on the inside of the next turn. And even has the momentum to challenge Verstappen, though not enough to pass. Later in the lap, Albon goes deep on the hard tire, I think, at turn 12, and taps Bortoleto, spinning himself. The hard tire not looking so great, and the other teams, it seemed, paid attention to that, and I don't think anyone went onto the hard tire.
No, they failed. It turns out I've had this bad idea, and I mean, this demonstrates it sucks. They tried the offset compound. That the hard was not 1 increment up on compound hardness; it was 2. So basically, they created a hole in the tire lineup, and the hard was just not a viable racing tire. So I've had this idea where it was like, maybe you just need to give people kind of a trickier tire allocation around this stuff. Yeah, that failed.
Yeah, I mean, Albon has pulled off heroics on the hard compound before, going super duper long. He, after this, pitted and went on to the medium tire because he was already in the back. I think it was just him, Ocon, and Hadjar that started on the hards. And just for completeness, it was Leclerc, Stroll, and Bortoleto who started on the soft. Lap 2, Sainz attempts the same move on Behrman that Antonelli did at turn 15, except this time Behrman backs out and keeps it on the track, ceding 8th place to Sainz. However, 5 laps later, Sainz tries the same move on Antonelli, who stays on the racing line and makes contact with Sainz' front wing, which spins Antonelli and takes Sainz out of the race. Sainz also received a 5-place grid drop for the next race in Mexico.
Danny very vindicated when it comes to the suspicion of is Carlos all that when it comes to these judgment calls, because this was yet another one of those. It's not the worst move I've ever seen, but again, not super high percentage and consequences pretty severe. And he does seem to find himself in those situations an awful lot. And that was a really good running position for Williams thrown away.
Yeah. Lap 15, Norris has stuck with Leclerc after Leclerc passed him on the opening lap and starts his attack at turn 13, the two of them taking different lines through sector 3. Nothing doing on this lap, but on lap 19, Norris gets a run on Leclerc in the DRS zone heading into turn 12. Leclerc covers the inside, so Norris tries the cutback, but does not have the juice and ventures briefly off track. 2 laps later, Norris finally has enough speed on the DRS straight to get around the outside of Leclerc before turn 12 and retakes second place. And it's shortly thereafter that he is shown the black and white flag.
Yeah, Leclerc, that overtake by that point, Leclerc had done everything he needed to do, which was he had made the softs, last as long as possible. He was wounded by that point. Like the Norris overtake was kind of a foregone conclusion because he was starting to get really lousy corner exits. Leclerc was, which is why like immediately after Norris got past him, Hamilton was all over him, and that was when Ferrari gave him the hook into the pits. But job largely done in terms of containing the damage that the softs roll off was going to have, and definitely a tougher first stint for the race than Norris wanted in this situation.
Yeah, I think he said after the race that he felt like he could have. Well, of course he would. I could have challenged for the lead if not for that. Well, he pits. Norris does 11. Yeah, 11 laps after Leclerc and goes from medium to soft and comes out behind Leclerc, who's now on medium tires. We'll come back to that. Lap 35, Behrman is chasing Tsunoda into turn 13, has a look to the inside, but Tsunoda closes the door, forcing Behrman to cut the inside of the corner, which spins him on the dried grass. This is kind of a weird one because it does look like Tsunoda moves under braking, and Oliver Behrman complains to that effect. But in Tsunoda's defense, it did not look like there was much room. It's one of those moves that, like, if Tsunoda didn't move and Behrman did pull that off with, only enough room for one set of his tires on the inside there, it would have been awesome. But again, a real long shot.
Yeah, and I just think, for me personally, I want to see a more severe moving under braking if I'm throwing that flag, really.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It is not much. Like, I had to look at it on replay to see what the complaint was, and there is a bit of movement, and there is, I think, the thing that really caught Behrman out a little bit more was that Tsunoda also slows down quite a bit to make the corner, to take that sort of sharper angle. So I think those two things sort of threw Behrman off, but it didn't cross what I would regard as a line for clean racing. And then Behrman sort of tries to salvage the move with a desperation play that goes as wrong as it could.
Yeah. Lap 51, 5 laps from the finish. Norris has closed back up to Leclerc, gets DRS on the main straight, and goes for a late lunge down the inside of turn 1. Norris goes deep, which allows Leclerc to cut back and retain second, but Norris keeps the pressure up, and once we are in the second DRS zone, Leclerc tries to defend to the inside, but Norris goes even deeper, running over the marbles out there, the clag, the discarded rubber, but still managing to get the car stopped for turn 12 and sealing second place. And the only other thing I have here is lap 53. Colapinto is told to hold position behind Gasly, but passes him anyway, which is pretty bold considering he does not yet have a contract for next year. And that, everyone, is the United States Grand Prix.
Just a quick thing.
Yep.
I think that team order to hold position was stupid, though. Like, that was a deeply... Gasly was done. Like, stick a fork in him. Bortoletto was... Not that it matters at the back of the grid like that. It didn't matter. This was the first race, second race of the F1 movie type situation. Like, who gives a shit? You're, like, fighting for 18th. But that said... Gasly was running 3 seconds off the pace per lap. Mm-hmm. That is not a situation where you can tell someone, "Oh yeah, hold position. We're not doing a swap." That's an absurd request. The move was less clean than I would like to see if I'm Alpine, but that was you shouldn't have uttered those words into the headset. Yeah,
and context is Bortoletto was behind him, behind Colapinto. So, but yeah.
And he blew past Gasly in seconds. Like, it was like Gasly was just done.
Yeah. And the race is done. Max Verstappen coming out on top. Another 25 points for the Drivers' Championship. In second, Lando Norris earning 18 points. And in third, Charles Leclerc, followed by Lewis Hamilton. Oscar Piastri down in fifth, earning 10 points for the championship. George Russell in sixth. Yuki Tsunoda seventh. Nico Hülkenberg getting some more points in eighth. Oliver Behrman coming home with 2 points. And Fernando Alonso getting away from the weekend with 1 championship point. Behind them, we've got Lawson, Stroll, Antonelli, Albon, and Ocon in 15th, followed by Hadjar, Colapinto, Bortoletto, Gasly, and the DNF of Carlos Sainz. And that was the United States Grand Prix. Shall we jump in to the news, Rob?
Absolutely.
Okay, well, we talked about Colapinto not having a contract. You know who does have contracts, Rob?
Those Mercedes boys.
All right.
Russell Antonelli confirmed for the 2026 season. Details are sparse. George saw a good interview with George where they asked him how long is the contract, and he said about 50 pages. And that's good. That it is. Again, I'm reminded of, I think it was Rosberg talking about how much he hated the fact that Toto Wolff doesn't sign drivers to multi-year extensions and also leaves it for late in the season. It keeps you on that hot seat. Valtteri Bottas has complained about this as well. I kind of feel like it's an asshole move, right? Like basically having your two drivers taking at will 1 year contracts. That seems dickish.
Yeah, I mean, especially George Russell's got to be like, what else do I have to do?
Yeah,
it's impossible. Probably
there's one driver I would say that has been better this year, and that is Max, and that is clearly what Toto is. He's just waiting out that marriage, right? He is just like, they're gonna divorce, and then I have my chance. That appears to be a big part. But again, this pattern goes back to Rosberg and Bottas. Like if he doesn't have full confidence that you're sort of a load bearing element of the strategy for the team moving forward, he will try and keep his options open and do that by also leaving his drivers in contract limbo until late in the season. Again, I'm a spiteful person. So like if I'm George, I think this is a situation where next year, if there's a way I can fuck Toto on the contract, I'm doing it. If we're hitting August and an opportunity comes with with a competitive team, I might take it just to go to a place where you got like more runway and you're not going to be operating this way and you're not clearly being treated as a placeholder for the driver he really wants. But either way, that pairing is going to be back next year, and who knows what 2027 will bring.
Yeah, there are a lot of driver contracts that are assumed through 2026, but we don't necessarily know. I'll run down those. Let's see. So contracts for at least 2026. Stroll, LOL. Alonso, both Cadillac drivers, Bottas and Perez. Leclerc is assumed 2026, but everything points to him being a lifer at Ferrari. Both Haas drivers, Behrman and Ocon. Now both Mercedes drivers. Both Sauber, soon to be Audi drivers, are at least through 2026, but no confirmation beyond that. And both Williams drivers. So that's more than half the grid has question marks around it for 2027. So we could see a lot of movement.
Oh, it's going to make our news segment so easy.
Yeah. What do you think about... So I could see a swap going on there.
Yep, that is the most likely scenario for me.
Yeah. What do you feel like? Do you think this is retaining these two guys? Do you think that's a strong move for Mercedes? I do. I think of the known quantities, I think George Russell is a great known quantity. Yeah. And Antonelli, I think, is still green, but I don't know that you can write him off necessarily, given that he is so young.
No, and again, maybe Toto is enough of a corporate sociopath that he will have no problem firing a kid who has in his childhood bedroom something he calls his Toto bear. Maybe that wouldn't bother him. It would keep me up nights. I would be like, oh fuck, like I bonded with this kid and he might not have it for F1. I don't like that situation. I think it's a strong move, but like Drew, I think for me it's just like, why the fuck are we making this move in October? Like, this is... Russell has had a very strong year, like maximized performance of that car. Again, I would probably say in terms of getting the most week in, week out, having the most focus, it's him and Max who have been the standout drivers for this year for me. And I think if they were in equal machinery through the season to the McLaren drivers, the McLaren guys are not close in this championship in terms of levelness of performance. And so I think it's a strong move. I just don't know what they were waiting on to get it done, and I don't know why you would sort of leave these guys in the lurch and have these negotiations hanging over the team for this much of the season, especially because of the exact thing you pointed out, that everyone is kind of in a wait and see mode for 2026. What were you going to do? You're just not going to upset the apple cart at this juncture in F1 history. Next year, the options are going to be open, but Russell should have had this thing sewn up, I think, by like midsummer. The only thing I can say that maybe there was some justification for was like putting a little bit of fear into Antonelli as to whether he'd be invited back. But even then, it's like there have been a few shitty races, but it's been an okay rookie season. It's just had the misfortune of being compared with rookie seasons that have been pretty precocious from other drivers. But yeah, strong move. I do think I'm with you. The most likely scenario I can see is that like a burned out, fed up Max Verstappen walks out of Red Bull over to Mercedes, and George slides in along Isaac Hadjar at Red Bull, and it becomes like a 1-to-1 deal. That is the most likely scenario that I could see at this point.
And I think if Max walks away from Red Bull, that team is toast. Because, then you've got two drivers down in Yuki Tsunoda land. And so I think that they did the only thing that they could to keep Max around, which is fire Christian Horner. So I have the vibes feel to me like that has placated Verstappen for the time being.
Well, and they're letting him go racing sports cars.
Exactly. Yeah. I would be very surprised at this point. Like a couple of months ago, I would not have been surprised if Russell switched to Mercedes. Now, it would be surprising to me.
I think
we'll see how year in it feels with Mekis at the helm.
I think there's a decent chance the Verstappen sweepstakes are like who's going to allow him the most latitude, like who's going to give him the fewest sponsor commitments and like public appearance commitments, and who is basically going to be like, yeah, you got it, killer. Go drive prototype cars this weekend. Oh, what's that? You want to drive the Indy 500? That seems really dangerous, and actually, that doesn't work for us in terms of our okay, fine, you go do it. Take a race off, big guy. It does feel like he can sort of write his own check at this point, and he might take some latitude over the money. I do wonder if getting rid of Christian Horner, if there's been a bit of a Gunther Steiner effect, where it turns out there's a bit of evidence that dude was the problem. The car's form has improved since they let him go. Mekis seems to be having the handling dynamics of the cars converging a bit for the drivers. And so I do wonder, with a full year of development under his belt, if some of these problems will go away. Like I think fundamentally you're right. The team is toast because you don't have that like categorical difference making driver. That is like Max will take you from a car that should probably be running P8. That thing could win races. There aren't many guys who can do that. And so I think the team would fall, but I think there's a decent chance they would fall to like third or fourth for a couple of years and be okay.
Yeah. Just to close out the driver stuff, we have 4 drivers unconfirmed for 2026. It's Colapinto and the other Red Bulls. So Hadjar, Lawson, and Tsunoda. Speaking of contracts, speaking of long-term deals, for the next 5 years at least, F1 viewers in the US have one option, and that is to watch F1 on Apple TV. So Apple TV has now won F1's US broadcast rights with a 5-year deal. Autosport reporting that it cost them $700 million for that 5 years. And for comparison, for context rather, the Apple TV produced F1 movie brought in $629 million versus a $2 to $3 million budget. So perhaps they had a little bit of an offset there. I think this really this boils down to two things for me. One is feature set. Will I lose any of the features that I've come to expect and enjoy from F1 TV? And how much am I paying? So I've done a little bit of research here. I got an email. This is how I found out about this. F1 emailed me saying, hey, your F1 TV subscription will no longer renew. Bye. And the crucial part for me of this email is that, so it says from January 2026, our new F1 broadcast partner in the US will be Apple TV. Next season, F1 TV Premium will continue to be available in the US, included with an Apple TV subscription only. So that to me says you will have feature parity. I assume this means that the F1 TV app on my Apple TV will continue to live there and on my phone, which is how I watched it this past week. And it will just require an Apple TV Plus, although I think they dropped the Plus recently from their branding. It's just an Apple TV subscription to log into that and to view it. The cost is the big one. So Apple TV costs $13 a month or $156 a year. The only way that is cheaper is if you were paying monthly for F1 TV Premium, which is $17 a month. Every other scenario, if you paid for F1 TV Pro or Premium or Access, those are all less than $156 a month. So you will be getting Apple TV's offerings, quote unquote, for free. Really, you're getting F1 for free by subscribing to Apple TV because it's not an additional charge yet. But that's the deal. Rob, your thoughts?
I'm kind of curious what the base F1 broadcast package is going to be on Apple. I'm curious if there's going to be if they're going to make a case to, hey, you don't need F1 TV in the Apple era for F1. But yeah, right now it doesn't affect me too much. Like I watch it through the F1 TV app. I'll have my features. I think what I find interesting about it, well, first, my nightmare scenario was always that a network would buy it and start running ads. Like that was always my nightmare scenario, is that F1, we would no longer be sheltered from the hell of commercial breaks by Mother's Polish and floor mats and Mercedes-Benz, that we would be thrown to the wolves of American racing TV coverage with horrible ad breaks, miserable experience, completely destroying the ability to follow a race. I'm glad that seems like it's off the table. I don't think there's any world in which Apple's like, yeah, you know what, we need to run ads against this. That seems like that's not going to happen. But it also seems like for all the game F1 has talked about growing the sport and, really leveraging this new audience and such, Apple makes very popular products. Like they are, the phones, everything. Like there's a ton of Apple devices. There's a ton of Apple TV subscribers. There's still nothing like broadcast television audiences. If you have your product up there, you're going to get a lot of eyes on it, and that is what I would have regarded as sort of an avenue to growth for the sport. This kind of feels like we're okay being a nichier luxury product, and if that means we don't ever occupy a NASCAR-like position in the American market, we're fine with that. That is not how we're going. Like, we don't see a path to do that, so we're not going to try. We're going to we're happy to sit inside this walled garden.
Yeah, it does feel like that. I think just looking at the cost here, and I'll go yearly because I think it makes sense to me. If you're an F1 fan, you're signing up for this season, most likely. That's a guess from me, but that's my guess. So previously, if you wanted to watch races live, your cheapest option was F1 TV Pro, and that was $85 a year. So going up to $156 a year with Apple TV, that is a $71 increase. That's big. That's almost double. I should say here that F1 TV Access, which is delayed replays, so you don't get live subscription or live viewing with F1 TV Access, it will still be available. So if you really can't stomach the $156 a year for Apple TV, you could theoretically still watch F1 TV Access a few days later than the race actually airs. So that is your only other recourse in the US. Yeah, I like having options. Yeah. Given that we do this podcast, I'm going to pay for it no matter where it goes. But it's...
hear me out, though.
Yeah.
What if Apple's like, you got to improve your broadcast bit rate? You're not on ESPN anymore. Like, Apple, like, we run higher bit rates here. We want a better picture. Now would that get your interest if they're coming in?
I already paid for the premium, which is 4K, and I think it looks great on my machine.
Good.
The other thing you brought up, ESPN, that is another consideration here, is that other viewers in the US could just watch the races on ESPN. So if they paid through their cable subscription for ESPN, or some other vector, I don't know if it comes with Disney Plus or whatever, now they're paying not $71 more, but $156 more, because now you won't be able to see it on ESPN.
Yeah.
So that's another consideration. Yeah, not the best.
ESPN couldn't afford to stay in that running. They've blown all their money on dudes in tank tops. So that is unfortunately, you couldn't stay in the game.
All right, final news story here, Rob. Speaking of staying in the game and competition, this is a fun one.
Yeah, and a weird one. So I saw that Red Bull had been fined for removing grid tape from Lando Norris's grid box area.
I think specifically they were fined for violating a
track marshal's instructions.
Yes.
Because though, and this is so the race had a good report on this. So apparently, and it's pretty normal for teams to do this. They put tape on the pit wall on the pit wall as like visual reference points for drivers to use, so that they line up correctly and don't overshoot the grid box at the start of the race, which is always, again, the drivers can't see where the tires are. You want every possible advantage, so you go right up to the limits of the box, but it's also very easy to get starting procedure violations if you don't get that spot on. So apparently a lot of teams will tape out marks to create sort of a visual reference point for the drivers to use as they go up to the grid box.
Yeah, and the race has a picture of where this is. It's not on the track; it's on the wall, so the driver can see it out the corner of their eye.
Because it won't help them if it's on the track, because again, they can't see what's on the track because of their seating position. So yeah, the idea is that they can sort of look to the side, and they can sort of use that as their reference point to see if they're sort of double check if they're lined up properly. And apparently, Red Bull mechanics have been, as they are clearing the grid for the start of the race, Red Bull mechanics have been running over and ripping that tape off, which is apparently not against the rules. But
if you can put the tape up there, you can take it down.
So then McLaren, and I'm not clear how, upgraded their tape securing procedure. They really got that fucker on there. And this time, when the Red Bull mechanic ran over, he couldn't get it off. And again, they're being told to clear the track for the start of the race. And the mechanic was like, "Okay, but I need to get this tape off to fuck with Lando Norris." And that is when they hit them with I think it was a €50,000 fine for not respecting that instruction. But apparently, like if they just been a little quicker on, the now, I'm also curious: are you allowed to use tools? Like if they had a little X-Acto knife, is that cool? Or like, do you have to? Is it like sign stealing in baseball, where if you got a runner at second and you got somebody who's just like, seeing the signs and reporting back to the dugout, that's cool. The second you like introduce technology to that process and you start sign stealing, then you burn in hell. But you're still allowed to keep your World Series trophies. Don't worry about that. Mm-hmm. But like, I am just curious, like, where does it end? Because if removing the tape is fine, if people are bringing along little scrapers, is it still fine? But this was a very funny. It also just feels like Red Bull really are the New England Patriots in a lot of ways, like finding the absolute pettiest ways to try to eke out an advantage, even if it makes you look like complete unsporting shitheads.
I love this kind of stuff. This is what Formula One is about for me. Is here's a little thing, and here's someone else trying to undo that little thing. All right. Well, we got a little thing coming up this weekend called the Mexican Grand Prix. Rob, tell us about it.
So this is, I believe, the highest altitude racetrack that F1 runs at in the season. I think it is actually to a greater elevation than either Interlagos or Austria. Which means that one of the quirks of this is that puts extra strain on the power units in particular, because you have to, getting air through those cars requires a slightly different setup. The other thing that the Mexican GP is known for, in addition to the altitude, is the stadium section there at the end of the lap, where the cars drive through an old baseball stadium before exiting and then coming back out onto the long main straight. A main straight heading down into a right, left, right corner complex that has generated a stunning number of accidents over the years, particularly on turn one. And even if you subtracted the ones that Sergio Perez is a part of, you still have a pretty impressive record of there being incidents at that corner complex. So keep an eye out for that in terms of action. I think if Piastri and Norris can arrange to be 4 or 5 spots apart on the grid again, I think McLaren would breathe very easy in this situation. But again, if they start near each other, turn turn one, it's not just the corner. It is also the fact that it is a long run down the straight. And I think Alex Albon and Yuki Tsunoda got into each other because you will just have like 3-4 cars like kind of jockeying for position heading down the straight, and it's easy to get a huge shunt at the end of that. So this is a it has some cool features. Drew, not one of my favorite tracks. I'm curious. I'm curious about you. I don't associate the Mexican GP with like great action.
I don't either. However, looking at my previous ratings from the last 4 years, starting in 2021, I rated it a 1 out of 4 for a processional race. 22 was a 2. And then 23 and 24 were both 3 out of 4s for entertaining. So it's really kind of no telling. I do feel similarly about Mexico. Autodromo Hermanos Rodriguez the same way as I feel about the Circuit of the Americas, where it's just sort of like there's just a lot of tarmac. And while I can picture a lot of the track, I don't immediately have a sense that it's definitely going to be an entertaining race. I do think that it could be entertaining for the championship because given what I'm seeing in my own statistics here, it is one of Max Verstappen's better tracks. It is one of Red Bull's better tracks, and it is not statistically great for McLaren or Oscar Piastri in particular. Also, Fernando Alonso, it's not great for, and Aston Martin in general. Mercedes tends to do well here, and Ferrari also is up there in the top 3. Previous finishers here, this is also illustrative. Carlos Sainz for Ferrari in 2024, and then the previous the 3 seasons previous to that were all Verstappen and then Lewis Hamilton in 2019. So statistically, McLaren, not one of their stronger tracks. Weather-wise, so this is a normal non-sprint race weekend. We are looking at warm temps, 77 degrees Fahrenheit for qualifying day or 25 Celsius. 0% chance of precipitation. And looks like light winds, 7 miles an hour, 11 kilometers an hour. That is even lower wind speeds at race day, 5 miles an hour or 8 kilometers an hour. Similar temps and only a 5% chance of rain on Sunday. As we head into the Mexican Grand Prix, the Drivers' Championship now looks like this. Oscar Piastri still on top, now only 14 points ahead of Lando Norris, who himself is 26 points ahead of Max Verstappen. So we have 5, is that right? 5 Grand Prix and 2 sprints remaining. I believe that's correct. That is a lot of points.
Oh, shit, yeah.
That is a lot of points potentially on the table. So Verstappen is 40 points behind Piastri. I still think that's a bit of a stretch, but I don't think second place is a stretch.
Especially 40 points is a bit of a stretch, assuming no DNFs. One DNF, that lead just disappears to, you know what I mean? It's down to a nubbin. And like it's mid-season when they're trying to talk up, after the break, when they're trying to talk up, like, does Max still have it? He downplayed it, and I was like, that's correct. Like, there's no way he gets back in this. That car looks real good. He's looking real good in it. The McLaren doesn't have it now at every track. In fact, doesn't have it at most tracks. Whatever's gone on with the development. Yeah, I think Max is actually in this thing.
Yeah, not a lot of other close battles in the top 7 here. We got George Russell in 4th, Charles Leclerc 5th, Lewis Hamilton 6th, Kimi Antonelli is 7th. He's 16 points ahead of Alex Albon. And then Nico Hulkenberg moves up a place to 9th after his weekend at the Circuit of the Americas. Just 2 points ahead of Isaac Hadjar, who is 1 point now ahead of Carlos Sainz, who also moves up a place into 11th. Fernando Alonso is just 1 point behind in 12th. And then we've got Lance Stroll in 13th, followed by Liam Lawson in 14th, Esteban Ocon in 15th. Yuki Tsunoda moves up a spot to 16th, followed by Pierre Gasly. Oliver Behrman moves up to 18th, and Bortoleto 19th, Colapinto 20th, and Jack Doohan 21st. The last two still.
You have to keep doing that to Jack.
Points. I'm sorry, Jack. Briatore said they might swap him back. So.
Yeah, that's so true. Any day now, they're gonna really evaluate these two guys side by side. It'll be a fair competition.
Yeah. Things look even spicier in the constructor standings for second place. McLaren, of course, has sealed the deal. They've got 678 points, 337 ahead of second place Mercedes. But then it's just a 7-point gap to Ferrari and a 3-point gap from them to Red Bull. So that is 10 points covering second, third, and fourth in the Constructors' Championship, which, of course, has massive monetary implications for whoever can seal that second place. Then a big gap of 220 points down to Williams, who are 39 points ahead of Racing Bulls in 6th. Aston Martin's in 7th, just 3 points back. Sauber is in 8th. Gene Hassan team are in 9th, and Alpine still in 10th. If you would like to join the standings yourself, you can join our fantasy league using the link in the show notes. Here is the podium from the United States Grand Prix. It is a three-way tie for second between IO Technology, Fueled by Hopium, and Bite My Shiny Metal Aston. Bite with a BY. So, I don't know, computers. But in first, Gunther in 60 seconds. Gunther in 60 seconds?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, nice. Overall, though, the podium looks like this. The Fast of Us 2025 is in third. In second, F1 banned my team name, and still in first, Ukulele, parentheses, Endor 8000. Whew! All right, that is it for Formula One talking. If you'd like to talk at us, you could do so by sending an email to shiftf1podcast@gmail.com or f1.cool/emails. You could also hit us up on the socials. That is us around the internet. And now it is time to take it around the world of racing. Rob, the Craftsman trucks are at Martinsville Speedway this weekend for the Slim Jim 200. Oh, yeah.
Delicious.
Snap into it. I love a Slim Jim.
Oh, yeah.
MotoGP is at the Sepang International Circuit in Selangor, Malaysia for the Sepang rounds.
Just want what they have.
No. The NASCAR Xfinity Series also at Martinsville for the IAA and Ritchie Bros 250. No idea what either of those are. The NHRA is at the South Georgia Motorsports Park in Adel, Georgia, for the NHRA Showcase of Speed.
Nice.
The Repco Supercars are back in action at Surfers Paradise Street Circuit. Been living most of our lives. I did watch finally the highlights of the Bathurst 1000 in my hotel room in San Diego this weekend. It was great. Really, there was a part... There's a part where a driver goes out of the race with a mechanical problem and kind of hops the fence to the infield to walk towards the pits, but he's, that's where the fans are. And the commentators are like, all right, how long does it take him to get a beer? Oh, someone has already handed him a beer.
Nice.
He just cracks it open. Immediately. Oh, it's so good. It's so Australia. I loved it. And the rain comes down. Oh, absolute chaos. It's worth your time. I'll put it again in the show notes. Let's see. Rounding out the rest of the weekend, though, we got NASCAR. We're also in Martinsville this weekend for the Xfinity 500. Is that kilobits per second?
Whatever it is, you won't see that on your end.
That's right. Also, Formula One. Maybe you've heard of it. Friday, October 24th, Free Practice 1 kicks off at 2:30 p.m. Eastern Time. Look at these very watchable times on ESPNU, followed by Free Practice 2 at 6 p.m. on ESPN News. Saturday, October 25th, Free Practice 3 is at 1:30 p.m. on ESPN News, followed by qualifying at 5 p.m. also on ESPN News. But the race, everyone, Sunday, October 26th, 4 p.m. Eastern on ABC, over the air. Take that, Apple TV.
Can't compete with that.
No. Danny has taken his grimoire to Australia, so we don't have it this week. But we'll be back next week with what horrors are contained within. Final thoughts, Rob.
Just that it came up toward the end of the race, and you see it in discourse a little bit. People love being like, these people running this team are dumbasses. Why would you let this happen? And it feels like sometimes there's a lot of people who are rooting for McLaren to just put the thumb on the scale and be like, anoint one of their drivers as their drivers' championship challenger and get the other to drop into a support role, a la Ferrari back in its heyday. And that's a good example of just like how often our position, or like the position, the frame from which things are discussed are like from the CEO position of like what is the most optimal way for this to play out. Because let's be clear, I think if McLaren does that, I think we lose out on what could be a spectacular end to the season.
Yeah.
Like I think that would suck. I also think there are pragmatic reasons McLaren doesn't want to do it. Like at this stage, to put that thumb on the scale breaches a lot of trust, damages relationships. You can't get back to this. I think there's also a case to be made for, you know, you're kind of trying to lean into, you know, trying to lean into the idea of the brand as like, this is where like the real racers go.
Mm-hmm.
Like we're gonna let, like we let Prost and Senna scrap it out. We'll let Oscar and Lando scrap it out too. Like we are not afraid of intra-team competition here. We are not going to optimize that way. So I think it's pragmatic reasons to do it, but it just strikes me as funny how F1 fandom will, at the drop of a dime, complain about like how boring the sport has gotten, how all the factors that sort of agitate against memorable, tense, close racing and hard-fought championships. And then the second you have two guys in the same car fighting to the end, taking each other out, like maybe putting it in jeopardy, like allowing a dark horse challenger from, you know, the former Max Verstappen to get back in the drivers' championship. You start having this discourse of like, should McLaren just like stop letting these guys race? And it's like, I think just because that's happened in the past, we shouldn't underplay how much that sucks for the sport, for a team to do that, to optimize everything around, we're going to get the drivers' championship and the constructors, and we are just going to make it so that the two best matched cars on the grid can't actually have a fair fight. Yeah.
I wholeheartedly agree with you. I don't know. I think it would be a real mistake for McLaren to do that. Like, for what reason? Prestige?
Yeah.
Yeah. Because it's really the Constructors' Championship that has the monetary implications.
Yeah.
Yeah. I sometimes just want to filter out any of that kind of talk because if you didn't like F1, you wouldn't be watching it. And so I think the only real, if we're looking at bottom lines here, the only one that matters is viewership. And the sport is in the healthiest it's been in a long time. So, yeah, I'm feeling good about the end of the season. I can't wait to see which way it goes. I think kind of any direction is interesting. We're going to have either a first-time champion, and a first McLaren champion in a long, long time, or we're going to have an incredible comeback from one of the greatest the sport has ever seen. So I'm feeling great about it, and I'm feeling great about F1. So not feeling great about paying more to watch it, though. So, all right. Thank you, Rob. Thanks, everyone, for listening. If you would like to support the show and get access to all of our bonus episodes, the early ad-free version of the podcast, and the official Shift F1 Discord, you can do so over at patreon.com/ShiftF1. Have a good race weekend, everyone. We will see you all next week.
Nyam.